The woman at the center of this story is someone I'm going to call Tandi. That's not her real name. I'm protecting her identity. When Tandi was appointed by the Department of Social Development to work for Minister Sisisi Tolashe as a food aide, she was thrilled. A government salary, working for a cabinet minister, it felt like a real opportunity. But from the start, things weren't quite what she'd been told to expect. Tandi had understood that she would be placed at one of Tolashe's 2 official ministerial residences in Cape Town or Pretoria. Instead, Tandi was sent to work in the minister's private home in East London, where Tolashe's daughter Kanisa lived, together with Tolashe's 3 young grandchildren, the kids of the minister's son, Nanny. Minister Sisisi Tolashe herself did not live in this house. Now, as a minister, it's well known that you get many perks. Free accommodation, free transport, free flights for life, free water and electricity, free Wi-Fi, it goes on. But what you are not allowed is to get the government to pay for someone to work in a house you don't even live in. Ministers are only allowed to use public money to pay the salary of 1 household employee in each of their 2 official residences. A private home in East London does not qualify, as I confirmed with the Department of Public Service and Administration, the DPSA. And then there was the salary arrangement. Tandi's offer of employment, which I've seen, contained a very unusual salary breakdown. She'd receive 8,000 Rand a month in personal remuneration. And then there was a further 7,670 Rand on her employment letter, listed under something called a minister's house allocation, described as money to be utilized for household. The phrase minister's house allocation, I discovered, doesn't actually exist anywhere in government regulations. Not in the Ministerial Handbook, not in the Public Service Act, nowhere. And here's what was actually happening in practice. The government was depositing around 15,800 Rand into Tandi's account each month. But almost immediately after the money landed, banking records show she was transferring roughly 7,000 Rand of it, nearly half, straight out again to someone saved in her phone as Makanyu. Makanyu is a term of endearment sometimes used for the name Kanisa, as in Kanisa Tolashe, the minister's daughter. Tandi's banking app listed the verified account holder as Dr. Tolashe. I confirmed that the cell phone number Tandi was sending money to every single month is registered in Kanisa Tolashe's name. So let's be clear about what was happening. Taxpayers were funding Tandi's salary even though they shouldn't have been. We know that because I have seen Tandi's payslips, which list her employer as the Department of Social Development and include a personal salary code for her. This is the government's payroll. Tandi was receiving her full government salary and then immediately giving half of it to Minister Tolashe's daughter every month to cover household expenses. Expenses for the household Tandi was living in alongside Kanisa Tolashe, where Tandi's primary job was looking after Minister Tolashe's 3 young grandchildren. Tandi told me through an interpreter that this was not a voluntary arrangement. She was told from the beginning 7,000 Rand of her government salary was owed each month to the minister's daughter. No negotiation. Tandi says her working conditions in other respects were hard as well. She claims she was allowed no days off at all, except Christmas. She had regular clashes with Kanisa. She says she even called the Department of Social Development's HR office at one point to complain about her working conditions, but she claims someone put the phone down on her the moment she said where she was calling from. I couldn't independently verify that allegation. Kanisa eventually moved to Johannesburg in mid-2025 for a new job, richly ironic in itself because she went to work at a well-respected think tank, the New South Institute, on its public service reform program. But even then, Tandi says the monthly payments to her continued. Kanisa came back to visit often on weekends, and Tandi says tensions kept building. Eventually, Tandi was fired. When I asked the DPSA whether it could ever be lawful for half a ministerial employee's salary to be deducted as a contribution to the household expenses they were living in, the answer was simple and direct. The Ministerial Handbook does not allow for deductions on staff members' salaries. Full stop. When I asked Tolashe's department for comment on this, they said they would need to check HR records to make sure Tandi was actually employed through the Department of Social Development, and then never got back to me. Neither did Kanisa Tolashe. But here's what my investigation suggests actually happened. Minister Tolashe used public money to employ a live-in nanny for her grandchildren at her private home. And the arrangement was structured so that nearly half of that government salary flowed straight back to Tolashe's daughter every month to subsidize the family's household costs. Tandi says she ended up working in this house for over a year. If what she says about her working conditions is accurate, this situation is not just a violation of the Ministerial Handbook. It's also a violation of many of the Department of Labor's regulations for the employment of domestic workers. Employers are not allowed to deduct any money from wages for food. A maximum of 10% of the total salary can be deducted for accommodation if they live in. Workers are supposed to have a written contract, which Tandi says she never received. They're not allowed to be made to work more than 36 hours weekly, have to be given 3 weeks annual leave, and if they've been working for more than 6 months, they're supposed to be given 4 weeks notice of termination. In Tandi's case, she says none of this applied. This is the real kicker. Sisisi Tolashe is the president of the ANC Women's League, which is supposed to lobby tirelessly for the rights of ordinary women like Tandi. She's also the minister of the department responsible for the welfare of South Africa's most vulnerable people. For Tandi, the opportunity of a lifetime turned out to be something else entirely. For Tolashe, it's another potential scandal she hasn't yet given the public any answers about.